everyone, my name is Thiago Fassano, and today we will be talking about changes in well being and relationship satisfaction in the years before and after marriage in a sample of New Zealand adults. I chose this topic because I'm really close to getting married, so it was interesting for me to analyze the findings of the study. I thought I could maybe apply some of these findings to my future wedding and make it work out better. So we will follow the usual model for research studies. So we'll go over the abstract, where we're gonna get some an overview of the study. Then after that, we go to the introduction to methods, results discussion, and after discussion, we're gonna go over some limitations and the conclusion in the overall study. And I hope you guys enjoy. So there has been some research done in the area, and we have basically two measures here. We have well-being and relationship satisfaction. The literature on well-being is more extensive and is basically established that um, well-being will rise before marriage and then it will fall right after. But for relationship satisfaction, it is not really clear when that it starts declining. So, I'm sorry. This study aimed to, sorry, analyze exactly in which points that it starts declining. It used a sample gathered in New Zealand, and it consisted of 14 waves of annual surveys, and it counted with about 1,500 participants. Authors use this event aligned piecewise latent growth model. Is a pretty complex name, just like other statistical tools. But it basically focuses on the event of marriage and separates the changes before and after this event. So this is really useful for what the authors were trying to analyze. They control for important variables such as age at marriage, length of relationship before marriage, number of children, and so on. And what they found was that both well-being and relationship satisfactions, they rose before marriage, and they drastically dropped immediately after and continue to decrease in the years following marriage. So we'll find out how exactly all of this happened. So for our introduction, we will go over the significance of marriage, some literature reviews, discrepancies and gaps in prior research. So that's a procedure that authors need to go through every time they're doing research, as we have been seeing. Some theoretical frameworks to analyze the theories behind all of these variables that we are analyzing. Then we'll go over premarital increases in well-being and relationship satisfactions, and we'll wrap up the discussion talking about, of course, the current research. So marriage is one of the biggest social events that we have in our society, especially in the Western society, even more in some Eastern societies. But it's just a really big milestone for everyone. Um, and it's important to understand how well-being and relationship satisfactions they can be affected by marriage, because this is supposed to be one of the best events that socially will happen in your life. So um, it brings a lot of significance with it, and that's why it's important to analyze all these variables around marriage. So for the literature review, the authors find that for well-being, as we've seen in the abstract, there was an increase in life satisfaction and subjective well-being leading up to marriage. And then these variables, they would return to baseline um, after the wedding, after marriage. So we're gonna see that this is the hedonic adaptation model, and we're gonna see exactly how this works. But for relationship satisfaction, the evidence was mixed, so they wanted to focus a little bit on this, and you're gonna see that their hypothesis was not as clear for relationship satisfaction because they really didn't know what to expect, so they're going to develop different models to try and explain relationship satisfaction and how it changes before, right after, and in the years following the marriage. So some discrepancies and gaps in prior research. So research would either focus on well-being or relationship satisfaction. The authors did not find a research that would focus on both at the same time. It was not evident when that the relationship satisfaction started to decline for the studies that reviewed this measure. So they developed this research upon over the need to really track when the changes happened. So they assessed the relationship satisfactions before, immediately after, and long after marriage to see where exactly does it start declining. And then previous research, they don't have clear control for important variables that can greatly influence the findings of the study, such as relationship length and number of children. So the theoretical frameworks that the authors used to explain the relationships between these variables and how they can be affected. The first one is the hedonic adaptation model. So this model will basically say that we tend to firstly overestimate the effects of important events on our life. So having a child, we expect it to be such a huge happiness and joy boost. But then what happens is that well-being returns to baseline levels after the event. The same way for a negative event. So if we have a death in the family or something like this, we tend to, of course, experience these negative emotions and a lot of distress at the time of the event, but then we tend to return to baseline levels after the event and in the years following. What can cause this hedonic adaptation? So, as we talked about, inaccurately addressing what makes us happy, and also neglecting adverse events. So, in the case of having a child, we expect a lot of joy from having a son, having a daughter, but we sometimes we overlook the negative aspects that come with it. So being awake at night and not knowing exactly how to handle specific parenting situations. So these are some causes that might explain this hedonic adaptation. Then we also have the emergent distress model, and according to the model, couples consistently face stressors, which can generate conflict and negativity, and also they experience reduced positive emotions, and also they have unmet expectations after marriage. So we're gonna see that this delusionment model, as you've seen, it can predict that well-being and relationship satisfaction, they are going to continue decreasing after marriage because of this constant stressors and and the
Pô,
risk of
irmão, que bandeira é
conflict
essa aí, velho?
after
Não é
marriage.
Estados Unidos não, mano. Jogou a bandeira do Emirados Árabes aí, que é isso?
So what the researchers found was that there was an increase in well-being and relationship satisfaction measures before marriage, and specifically for well-being, it can be addressed by either positive relationships experiences, so fewer conflicts, positive illusions, novel activities as a couple, opportunities for self-expansion, and also by social beliefs about marriage. So specific influence of marriage anticipation, as we've seen, it's a much celebrated milestone. So these aspects, the relationship experiences, and also the socially held beliefs about marriage, they can boost well-being before marriage and lead to this increased levels. And then in the same way for relationship satisfaction, we have basically this falling in love effect where everything is good, everything seems good. Also, we are given the opportunity to integrate different perspectives and identities to our sense of self, so we're basically expanding. We are also taking care of our image, so you start going out with that girl, you're gonna shave every day and you're gonna make sure you smell good. So this is a consequence of a beginning of a relationship, which leads to higher relationship satisfaction. Also, as we've seen this fall in love effect, we're gonna see everything in a positive way, right? So the partner, we will rarely ever see the facts in them, and basically everything is good, everything is all right. Beliefs in expectancies of life after marriage. So since it's a huge milestone, people often hypothesize who they will be or dream about who they will be and what their life are going to look like after marriage, and this leads to this dreaming effect. It leads to increased relationship satisfaction as well in the present. So after marriage, um, how does relationship satisfaction can change? As we've seen, literature is not as extensive on this specific matter and is still unknown in which exact point does it start declining. So the authors, they develop three panels to try and explain this relationship. So panel A, you can see that you have an increase in relationship satisfaction until marriage, and then right after marriage you have a drop and then stabilization. So this is basically the hedonic adaptation model. So you have the increase, drop, and then stabilization. And then panels B and C, they take into consideration the delusionment and the distress models, the emergent distress models. So as you can see in both of them, what is common is that you have an increase and then a gradual decrease in relationship satisfaction measures. But the difference is that in panel C you have a drop right after marriage and then it starts declining, and in panel B on the other hand you have this gradual decrease and you don't have a drop. So because of that, you could say that panel C is more like the hedonic adaptation model, and then panel B is of course a little bit more different. So the current research, the objectives, they were of course to assess the changes in well-being, including life satisfaction, subjective well-being and belonging, and relationship satisfaction, and track these changes in three phases basically. So before marriage, in the years before marriage, right after marriage, and then in the years following marriage as well. And then more specifically, when does it start declining? Yeah. So the hypothesis for they developed basically two different hypotheses for well-being. They predicted the findings to go in the same directions as previous findings and basically just following the hedonic adaptation pattern. And what they hoped to add was that they were going to add control for important variables, as we've seen relationship length and number of children. And then for relationship satisfaction, they expect the findings to support one of the models that they developed. So models A, B, or C that we've seen before. So our methods section, we're going to talk about our study design, the participants, our measures, variables, and the analytical approach that the authors used in this research. So for our study design, the authors used longitudinal data from the New Zealand Attitudes and Values Study, and then NZAVS for short. They tracked, they held these surveys in annual waves, and it lasted around 14 years. The participants, they had to be continuously partnered. So participants were considered only the ones who began the surveys when they were not married, and then they married and were still answering the surveys, and then they continued married and were still answering the surveys. Because of course, relationship and satisfaction will be different in a couple that ends up divorced. So divorce is often caused by decreases in relationship satisfaction and well-being. So they did not consider these participants in the study as a way of controlling for extraneous factors such as divorce. And then all participants identify as heterosexual at some wave of the study. The authors do not mention how this would be important, but I assume that one way is controlling for gender. And so the measures used. So as we've seen, we have well-being, which involves satisfaction with life, subjective well-being. So for satisfaction with life, participants rated 2 items. So the items were: I am satisfied with my life, and in most ways my life is close to ideal. And then they rated these items according to the scale points ranging from 1 to 7. So 1 is strongly disagree and 7 strongly agree. And then for subjective well-being, there were 4 items, and they included standard of living, health, future security, and personal relationships. And then the participants rated these items in the scale points ranging from 0, which meant completely dissatisfied, to 10, which meant completely satisfied. For belonging, participants rated 3 items, which were: I know that people in my life accept and value me. I know that people around me share my attitudes and beliefs, and I feel like an outsider. So they rated these items in a reverse coded manner. So 1 would be strongly disagree, and 7 strongly agree. For relationship satisfactions, they were single face valid items, including relationship satisfaction. So how satisfied are you with your relationship with your partner? And then from 1 to 7, 1 being not satisfied and 7 being very satisfied. The analytical approach, again, they use the event-aligned piecewise latent growth model, a big name to say that changes were separated according to whether they happened before or after the event. So since we're analyzing marriage and it's such a big event, and we want to analyze before, right after, and years following, we use this event aligned piecewise latent growth model to address these needs. Also, key aspects of the model, marriage is considered time zero, and then of course you separate the data into pre-marriage and post-marriage segments, and they use Bayesian estimation, and you can see that it says use of non-informative priors to let data estimates. So non-informative priors means that previous knowledge is not really impactful in the situation, because what Bayesian estimation is basically is that you have assumptions or previously collected data, and you're gonna make estimates, updating this previous knowledge with new data collected. Our results, so we will be talking about pre-marriage findings, post-marriage findings, and comparative analysis. So for our pre-marriage findings, they found significant increases in life satisfaction, subjective well-being, and relationship satisfaction before marriage. And post-marriage findings, they found basically that right after marriage, well-being and relationship satisfaction they dropped, and then continued declining in the years after. And the exception was that sense of belonging did not significantly decline in the years after marriage. And then comparing well-being and relationship satisfaction, as we've seen, both constructs they boost before marriage, so really big increase before marriage, and then well-being, so life satisfaction and subjective well-being, and relationship satisfaction, they continue to decline while belonging remains more stable. And what this basically means is that marriage is, as we imagine, is such a big event, and its impact on the lives of couples, it's not only it just not happens in a single time point. It has, if we will, carry over effects that last for a while. So interpreting our findings. So the hedonic and adaptation and beyond. So the initial marriage, post-marriage drops in both well-being and relationship satisfaction. It reflects the hedonic adaptation model, and the further decline in these measures, it gives support to the emergent distress and the delusionment models, confirming that there might be still stressors that can generate conflict and negativity after marriage. Also, because the measures change in such a similar way, it can be expected that there are associations between well-being and relationship satisfaction. So basically, the authors believe that they can be correlated, well-being and relationship satisfactions. Also, just highlighting the highs and lows of both phases, so before and after marriage. So before marriage, you can see that it is findings that it is a period of a lot of excitement and everything is basically good. And then after marriage, there's this decline which can still be decreasing after a while. So the caveats and conclusions, we're gonna talk about caveats and limitations, implications, and future directions and conclusions. So there are some limitations in the measures. The authors chose to use single item measures. So for like belonging, single item measures may impact the quality of the data collected. Also, there might be some participants in the sample who are not in their first marriage, and it has been found before that participants often experience more positive emotions in their first marriage, so the second marriage would not bring that much positive emotions, and then um, the sample would be influenced by the results in this manner. The effect size report, they are significant but small, but they can accumulate over time. And also, talking about generalizability, the sample is majorly comprised by New Zealand, and therefore its generalizability is limited because of that. And also, we're talking here about continuously partner individuals, so it may not extend to different populations. Our implications and future directions. So we've seen that the first year of marriage may be a vulnerable period. So couples need to look for extra support and be willing to talk things over in that first period to avoid major conflicts and divorce and major implications on well-being, relationship satisfactions mostly. Also, the authors highlight the need to explore the mechanisms behind premarital boosts and post-marriage declines. And also, um, they suggest that future studies need to have longer follow-up periods to assess well-being and relationship satisfaction years after marriage. The study also has theoretical contributions, so it integrates well-being marital literature to propose a nuanced view of marital transition effects. So what this is saying basically is that the two variables are deeply intertwined, so it is kind of hard to analyze the big picture. So this study, it breaks it down a little bit and provides important insight in that manner. Our conclusions. So before marriage, increases in well-being and relationship satisfactions were observed, followed by drops and continuous declines. Also, the biggest takeaway of this study is that marriage is such an important transition in life, and it is accompanied by dynamic changes with lasting implications on the individual and relationship outcomes. And the final thought is that um, couples need to be supported with interventions, especially in the year after and following marriage, for them not to go over conflicts that much. This is the reference for the article I use. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me. I really hope that you guys were able to learn today with my presentation. And do you have any questions for me at this moment? Okay, so if you don't have any questions, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening to me. And please reach out if you have any questions or if you want the link to the article. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye bye.